How would you define underrated?
He deserves more recognition.
I don't understand this game of football.
The minute someone's underrated, then they become overrated because everyone says he's underrated.
Hey, hold on.
Doesn't make any sense.
It's the receiver. 9.
What do we got? 39. Getting us 7 points here.
All 6 of you worked your tail off.
5 seconds left. 4. You dreaming? 3. 4. That was 3.
7 any 10 questions 2 weeks. 1.
I always have a hard time when someone says a player is overrated or underrated. Who does the rating?
Well, we do.
They're killing me, Whitey. They're killing me.
For our list of the top 10 most underrated players of all time, we excluded no one.
Oh, now we got a problem.
You can't be in a Hall of Fame and be underrated.
That's the definition of rating somebody. You're famous. You're in a Hall of the Famous. I'm sorry, if you need more than that, then you're a very insecure person.
Geez, that's the first time anybody ever told me that.
I'm not buying it. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not buying it.
No way, man. No way.
They really have no idea how great guys like that were.
That was a big-time answer right there. Big-time answer.
Some of the time with these Hall of Famers, we hand them the yellow blazer, we put them on the podium, we have a speech, we cheer, and then we tend to forget about them.
We're going to keep this simple.
You guys got to be better than that.
Be patient with them.
If we think a player is better than people remember, he's got a shot at making our list.
Oh, I got that.
When public opinion and player performance have a gap, there's your underrated level right there. Okay?
10. The number 10 most underrated player of all time, Len Dawson.
Is he underrated in the group of Hall of Fame quarterbacks? Maybe.
Stay here and make it look like we know what the hell we're doing.
He is really a classic underrated player.
Underrated. He won a Super Bowl. He's in the Hall of Fame. He shouldn't be on an underrated list.
How many mistakes are they going to make out there?
Well, geez, tell them to shut their big mouth and call them.
Lenny Dawson is underrated.
The best quarterback in the NFL and the AFL, week in, week out, the late 1960s, was Len Dawson.
Throw that thing on the outside, Leonard. He can't cover that thing, Lenny. Throw it anytime.
He ran Hank Stram's system as well as anybody could.
Come on, Len. Come on. Get him out of there.
Dawson at quarterback. Gets the snap. He fakes the run to Mike Garrett.
Len Dawson led his league in completion percentage 6 times. He led his league in touchdowns 4 times. Quarterbacks of his era, besides him, did not throw 26 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. They threw 20 touchdowns and 25 or 30 interceptions.
That's a rotten exhibition of football. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Len Dawson is like a West Coast offense quarterback from today, time traveling back to the 1960s.
I think the Chiefs seem like a team that really got there on defense. And I think of, Len Dawson as like an efficient manager.
Haters will hate, but Len Dawson's fans are quite supportive.
I was 8 years old, and I got to meet Len Dawson, and he signed this for me, and I kept it my whole life. I'm 46. I've kept nothing else. Ex-wives, dogs, Walter Payton ball, Joe Montana jersey. I hated that divorce judge, but I wouldn't let him have the Len Dawson autograph.
Len Dawson was the quarterback of one of the signal games in the early days of the NFL.
Our number 10 most underrated player was the MVP of Super Bowl IV.
It was there, wasn't it, boys? It was there, wasn't it? All right, watch it flip.
But does anyone remember?
Whenever I see Super Bowl IV highlights, all I see is Hank Stram matriculating down the field.
Come on, Lenny. Pump it in there, baby. Just keep matriculating the ball down the field, boys. Yes,
it's
sir.
the only Super Bowl where all the highlights take place on the sideline.
How in the world can all 6 of you miss a play like that? All 6 of you miss a play.
Len Dawson got a Super Bowl ring to show for it.
Nice going, Leonard. Nice going, baby.
And yet he doesn't get the credit he deserves.
Do I think he's underrated? It's a sin.
Boys, that's it, Randy.
for sure. He gets screwed.
Before Neon Dion made sure nobody underrated him, there was Leapin' Lamar Parrish, a cornerback for the Bengals who had a similar knack for getting to the end zone.
He was a little bit like Deion Sanders. He was a little bit like Ed Reed, too.
They ain't never saw nothing like this now.
And when he got a punt return or a kick return or an interception, he made that one cut and he was gone.
Parrish's partner in crime, cornerback Ken Riley, never made a Pro Bowl despite retiring with the 4th most interceptions in NFL history.
I think what happens a lot of times, if you don't win Super Bowls and you don't win championships, you get underrated, you get bypassed.
A lack of rings might also explain why our number 9 most underrated player never gets his due.
The number 9 most underrated player of all time, Brian Westbrook.
Your list is definitely wrong again. I deserve to be a little bit closer to the top.
You know what? I don't know if Brian Westbrook is really an underrated player.
I think people always gave him props. I thought people propped up Westbrook.
Westbrook's sweet, dog. I like Westbrook. He's sweet.
I mean, if Brian Westbrook is underrated, it's criminal. I think in Philadelphia, he's not underappreciated. And if he's underappreciated outside of Philadelphia, it's because people didn't get to watch him play.
Brian Westbrook was one of the great underrated players I think we've ever seen. Here was a guy who really did everything. I mean, you look at the great backs that do everything. Marshall Faulk comes to mind right away. You know, Brian Westbrook was kind of a mini version of Marshall Faulk.
You can't catch that little guy.
Brian Westbrook got so much attention for being underrated that he started to get a lot of respect.
He's not just good, he's great.
Would I put him on all-time top 10? No.
So why does the former Philly back appear on our list of guys who don't get enough brotherly love?
It just comes down to not talking about my game, letting my game speak for itself.
There is your ultimate weapon.
He was never a guy that beat his chest and pointed fingers or, said I'm better than this guy. I mean, he was a true pro, man. He went out there and made people pay.
He stiff arms Michael Adams in the face.
For whatever reason, the total yards stat is not a prominent one.
Brian Westbrook has now gained more yards from scrimmage in a season than any player in Eagles history.
But you can't rush for 1,800 yards if you're receiving for 800 or 900 yards every year.
But then when you combine the yards, receiving, rushing, some punt returns.
Brian Westbrook, he's going, he's gone.
That's when you see the value of some of the most underrated players.
When you thought about that era of the Philadelphia Eagles, first you had Jim Johnson's defense. They were definitely a defensive-minded team. Then you had Andy Reid, and Andy Reid, as everybody knows, likes to pass the ball. And then on top of that, you had Donovan McNabb, and Donovan McNabb was like a carnival show. And then you add Terrell Owens into the mix, and those two together, they took a lot of attention off of Brian Westbrook.
I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I thought Brian Mitchell did more than him.
Everybody calm down. Take a deep breath.
Absolutely, Brian Westbrook should be higher. I don't care what list you put out there.
I love it. Harold Carmichael did more than Brian Westbrook ever did.
Everyone always thought that Westbrook was going to peter out after a year or two, and then it was 3, and it was 4, and it was 5.
And Westbrook is off to the races.
And he stayed at the top of his game for a long period of time and was one of the underrated and undervalued weapons in the National Football League.
Maybe the rest of the league and the country will wake up that this is indeed a premier bank. The number 8 most underrated player of all time, Ken Anderson.
Number 8.
There's no question Ken Anderson's one of the most underrated players ever.
Ken Anderson at number 8, this tells you that somebody is not paying attention.
I wasn't paying attention, as usual.
Ken Anderson is easily in the top 3 most underrated players in the history of the National Football League.
He's underrated on the underrated list. He should be number 1 on the underrated list.
He's the most underrated player not in the Hall of Fame. There is no question.
1975 brought new heights to the Bengals passing attack, a machine geared around the steadiest quarterback in pro football, Kenny Anderson.
I think when you look at the history of the West Coast offense these days, yes, it started with Bill Walsh in Cincinnati, But the guy who really took it to another level was Ken Anderson.
Looks, fires into the end zone. Touchdown.
You can make a case, a very good case, that Ken Anderson was Joe Montana before Joe Montana.
Wait a minute, just wait a second.
Because when Bill Walsh was the offensive coordinator of the Bengals, he basically put in the West Coast offense with that Bengals team.
What a throw from Anderson.
Should have been called the Ohio Valley offense.
Now I'm being told by you what the to do.
Had he stayed there as Bengals coach, Ken Anderson would have been Joe Montana.
While we admit Ken Cool might not have the same ring, Anderson makes our list because of another four-time Super Bowl champion that gets all the attention.
It was just easy to overlook him playing in the shadow of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Terry Bradshaw.
It's the classic quarterback dichotomy. You have a stat guy in Anderson, and you have the quote-unquote winner in Bradshaw.
The Pittsburgh Steelers are the champions of the National Football League for the fourth time.
The main difference was he was playing on the other side of the ball from the steel curtain. They could make up for the mistakes that Bradshaw made.
Staubach really took a shot.
Anderson could not make mistakes.
You're talking about a guy who was completing 60, 65, and in one case, 70% of his passes during the course of a season with a terrible offensive line.
Anderson back to throw, looks, fires into the end zone, touchdown.
As a matter of fact, when Ken Anderson retired, he was sacked more than any quarterback in the history of the National Football League, and he was still not throwing interceptions. He still was completing passes, and he still was taking a Bengals team, a franchise that was still very young at that point, and making them winners.
The Bengals put this AFC title away.
Still, it's the game he didn't win that keeps our number 8 underrated player from a higher ranking on our list.
He elevated a Cincinnati team that was probably talented, but not great in any way. He elevated them, I think, about as far as they could have been elevated.
This guy, there's a big push to get in the Hall, and he should be in the Hall. He's definitely underrated.
There are 31 quarterbacks enshrined in the Hall of Fame, yet only 6 of them have thrown more touchdown passes than Dave Craig.
Chargers rush only 4. Craig goes with a pass in the end zone. Touchdown, Seahawks!
So why is Craig underrated?
Underrated because you don't think about him. Somebody else always brings him up. You're always responding to Dave Craig. You're never generating your own Dave Craig thoughts.
Still, Craig couldn't crack our list because he was sacked 494 times in his career, the third most in NFL history. And while he spent most years without a Pro Bowl offensive lineman, so did our next underrated player.
The number 7 most underrated player of all time, Randall Cunningham.
He's overrated. I think you got him on the wrong list. He should be on the overrated list.
No, I think Randall is underrated.
Underrated? What did he do? Oh, that's right. He made that one great play on a Monday night game.
Randall flattened at the 10, but throws the ball to Jones for a touchdown.
Randall Cunningham is the reason probably that Michael Vick wanted to play football to begin with.
That's why I feel look good on you, baby. Oh, right on, feel look good on you.
He was incredible. He was amazing. He was phenomenal. I think he's way underrated.
Randall Cunningham took the art of quarterbacking to another level. I mean, his mobility really elevated him.
Cunningham is going to run.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why he was underrated, and yeah, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the ultimate weapon. But a lot of people thought of him as almost a novelty, right? Almost a fad. Oh, he was the running quarterback. But he won big games for them.
I don't know how he did it. I think we're looking at Plastic Man.
Our number 7 most underrated player may have been known as Plastic Man, but it's his golden arm that seems to go unnoticed.
He was maybe the best thrower in the history of the game as far as throwing a javelin-like football, and he could throw it like 90 yards almost.
Cunningham with a marvelous pass down the far side of the field.
He was 30 games over 500 as a quarterback. He threw for 3,000 yards 5 times. He also was a guy that had 70 more touchdowns than interceptions over the course of his career. And look who he was throwing to. I mean, Calvin Williams, Fred Barnett.
Unbelievable.
I mean, Chris Carter before he was really Chris Carter.
Absolutely unbelievable.
I would give Randall far more credit for being a passer than people do.
Though Randall did have his moments as an Eagle, he threw for 400 yards in the Fog Bowl, it was a late career move to Minnesota that proved his talents as a passer.
Vikings were 13-1 when he started games. He finished with 34 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, career numbers for a guy who had already had a very good career.
But if you look back at that, if he doesn't have Randy Moss, does he have the same success?
They call me the freak, man.
You got two freak athletes making all these plays. I don't know if we can put that on a conventional level.
He was a guy that I think had a lot of potential, and it wasn't realized, but it wasn't realized based on his fault. I mean, he had the 1991 injury that submarines his whole season.
He's down. Randall Cunningham is down on the field.
And if you look at his kind of career arc, he's building towards 91, shreds his knee, loses the season, and then is never quite the same after that.
Talk about nightmares.
I mean, stupid Bryce Paup ruined not only much of Randall Cunningham's career, but a large portion of my childhood. Like, his knee blew out, and then that was it. His career was largely over, and so was my childhood.
The number 6 most underrated player of all time, Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison, Mr. Antisocial, really just wanted to live in an isolation pod away from all of humanity.
I wouldn't say he was underrated. I just think he was quiet.
Marvin Harrison did he ever do an interview? Has anybody ever heard his voice? So very interesting, sort of mysterious guy, Marvin Harrison. I mean, you've seen after his career, kind of mysterious.
Marvin Harrison's mouth wasn't big, but his numbers sure were. Our number 6 most underrated player topped 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns in 8 straight seasons.
Here's it out down the corner, looking for Marvin in the end zone. Touchdown!
In 2002, Harrison's 143 receptions set a new NFL record.
He's caught more passes than any player in league history in a single season.
Besting the old mark by 20.
He was one of the most beautiful wide receivers we ever had. And yeah, he's definitely underrated.
But some believe Marvin's amazing numbers can be summed up in 2 words.
Peyton Manning.
I think a lot of people assumed that any receiver could do these things with Peyton Manning.
If I call a pass play to Marvin, he never says, "You sure you don't want it to Reggie?"
Marvin Harrison was a guy who was in a great situation.
He played with a Hall of Fame quarterback his whole career, indoors on a fast track in the same system.
Throws it down the middle, intended for Marvin. He's got it. Touchdown!
Everything set up perfectly.
Peyton Manning knows exactly what he's doing. He knows he's going to get a hit. He delivers the throw down the field to Harrison.
Number 1 combination between wide receiver and quarterback receptions all time.
Touchdown! Touchdown! Touchdown!
Y'all fix this yourselves. Y'all done a good job today.
The level of adoration for Peyton Manning
Do you have to pay for those Boy Scout badges you carry?
has made anything Colts affiliated since 1998 pale by comparison. So yeah, Marvin Harrison kind of fits because it's always all about Peyton.
Marvin Harrison went to 8 Pro Bowls. He was on 8 All-Pro teams.
More touchdowns receiving than any Colts player in history.
He didn't fly under anybody's radar. I don't know who is saying he's underrated.
Marvin is the most underrated, I think, player in NFL history.
He deserves more recognition.
I don't know. When a guy's got 1,300 catches, it's hard for me to call him underrated.
He was never underrated. He was never overrated. He was just rated.
And now, the number 5 most underrated player of all time, Andre Reed.
How can you have a guy who should be in Canton now 5th on a list of underrated players?
I mean, let's face facts. He was one of the best ever. I mean, when you look at those two, Kelly and Reed, are you kidding me?
And it is caught by Reed at the 40.
That was just flat out sick.
Andre Reed breaks another
Jim Kelly is not a first ballot Hall of Famer without Andre Reed.
When you talk Bills, they went to 4 straight Super Bowls. I don't think that's ever going to be done again. So you got to give some of those guys some Hall of Fame nod. Okay, the quarterback's in, the running back's in, put the receiver in.
So you like him on this list?
Love him on the list. Definitely underrated.
Besides getting the cold shoulder from Canton, our number 5 most underrated player spent 15 years under frosty conditions.
I think another thing that is a little bit underrated about Andre, played in cold weather, bad weather games throughout his career.
Andre Reed runs in for the score.
And he also was so tough. You talk about diva receivers, pretty boys.
Y'all talking about me?
I mean, he did the dirty work over the middle.
Does he make the reception? Yes. He makes the reception.
Here's the thing, when we start talking about rated and underrated, the question always becomes, what was your system?
Get up, field, stop dancing.
The system that Andre Reed played in was designed to create huge numbers in receiving yards and receptions.
He throws, he's got a man, Reed.
He wasn't in a real pass-happy offense. People have the vision of an aerial circus, but the reality is the Bills passed 50% of the time throughout his career. So Andre's numbers might have been better on a different team.
Are y'all convinced now?
All schemes aside, what earns Andre Reed a place on our list is consistency. In fact, only Jerry Rice has more seasons with 50 or more catches.
The problem with Andre Reed and other players of his era, besides Jerry Rice, is they set a group of records, and the next generation of receivers came and smashed those records only a couple years later.
I'm in a league of my own. They ain't ready for me.
In 1990, their first Super Bowl season, they threw 425 passes. That are to be 30th or 31st in the league today.
All the little silly reasons to undercut a guy apply to Andre Reed. He never won a Super Bowl, so underrate him.
He throws, Reed, touchdown.
He didn't play in a major market, so underrate him.
Throws, down there is Reed at the 5 in for the touchdown.
He didn't have that quote-unquote signature catch. Underrate him.
Andre Reed, 3 straight touchdowns.
If you can look past those things and look at the player, the accomplishments, what he really did week in and week out, you realize that he is a great player, that he is a Hall of Fame caliber player.
The number 4 most underrated player of all time, Otis Anderson.
Otis Anderson, I wouldn't have had him on the list.
Oh, no. Nah. How did he even get in the top 10?
I would have had about 15 other names come to mind before I would have got to Otis Anderson.
Sheesh. Is anyone with us on this?
What happened?
He was very underrated. Got over 10,000 yards.
Lomax drop, gives them the delay. O.J. Anderson left side.
When you think of the great running backs, you don't think of him because he was in a small market in St. Louis for the most part.
O.J. Anderson.
At the end of the career with the Giants, big market, but he wasn't the same running back. He was very underrated. When he broke in with the Cardinals, he was one of the most skilled running backs that came into the league. His first game as a rookie, he had a 76-yard touchdown.
76 yards for O.J. Anderson.
In 1979, Otis Anderson set an NFL rookie rushing record with 1,605 yards. And he wasn't done.
Here was a guy who could crank out 1,100-yard, 1,200-yard, 50-catch seasons like clockwork for the worst team by far in his division.
In the 6 seasons from 1979 to 1984, only Walter Payton amassed more total yards from scrimmage than our number 4 most underrated player.
Early on in his career, he was as flashy a runner as you could get. I mean, he was great. But later in his career, he evolved into a power guy.
In 1986, a beaten-up Otis Anderson was traded to the Giants.
When he got to the Giants, he was tough. He was not flashy. He was not great in open field. Just gave him the ball. but the power went that way.
Let's go with OJ.
All right, OJ.
Our number 4 most underrated player is best known for a single chin-busting run in his MVP effort of Super Bowl 25.
He's known, in my opinion, for that Super Bowl game, and one game does not a top 10 spot make.
Most people remember that late career grinder for the Giants.
Tired, sore, legs sore. I mean, hey.
Feeling your age, OJ?
Yeah, I'm no young pup.
O.J. Anderson still holds the Cardinals' all-time rushing record by 3,350 yards. If it wasn't for those seasons, he'd be even more underrated. He'd probably be so underrated that he wouldn't be on the show because he'd be too underrated.
Come on, man, what you doing?
Sadly, even we aren't above overlooking the deserving.
Unacceptable.
That list should be full of offensive and defensive linemen.
Linemen?
Nah. Every offensive lineman's been underrated.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But really what we're saying is we don't know anything about this guy.
That's probably true.
Jimmy, who do you got?
Would have to be on a team that won. Randy Cross?
Absolutely.
Yes, yes!
I'd put me somewhere on that list. I'd put Kent Hill somewhere on that list. Kent was cut out of a piece of rock, and he could run like a deer.
Let me add another underrated. Dexter Manley.
Do I get the day off with no pay?
He survived in this world and played football and became an all-pro and won a Super Bowl ring and couldn't read. Now that, I think, is underrated.
Impressive, but it doesn't measure up to our number 3 most underrated player of all time.
The number 3 most underrated player of all time, Charles Haley.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Charles Haley's about 2 years past due being in the Hall of Fame.
5 Super Bowls? No, you can't be underrated and have 5 Super Bowls.
Make sense to you guys?
He never had that one wow season. He went to 5 Pro Bowls, but he never led the league in sacks. He never was considered the best defensive end in football. To be a good player for a long time, that's a great way to get underrated.
Underrated, I think that's fair. Perhaps a victim of playing at the same time as some of the greatest pass rushers of all time. He played at the same time as Reggie White, the same time as Bruce Smith.
Our number 3 most underrated player couldn't even escape the shadows of his own roster.
Let's go, baby.
He was on a team with Montana, Rice, Walsh, Ronnie Lott. In the public perception of what the 49ers were, he was 6, 7 down on the list.
And the attention he did receive wasn't always endearing.
Part of Charles's shtick was, you know, as they say down here in the South, Charles wasn't right.
I said, you come over here trying to block me this time. I'm gonna hurt your ass.
And you can't game plan for crazy.
It's probably good that he was underrated and went under the NFL's radar.
You didn't show me no love. That's what it was. You didn't show me no love.
Everybody got offended by Charles Haley, but I think that was the beauty of it.
He was a dominant big game player.
Charles Haley in 12 playoff games had 11 playoff sacks. In fact, there were only 2 playoff games where he did not have a sack.
Charles Haley wasn't just a playoff playmaker, he was a kingmaker.
Charles Haley might have single-handedly switched the balance of power in the NFC. You know, the years with the 49ers, he was a dominant pass rusher, and then the 49ers made the inexcusable mistake of trading him to the Cowboys, and then all of a sudden, the Cowboys become the dominant team of the NFC.
After winning 2 Super Bowls with the 49ers, our number 3 most underrated player went on to win 3 more with the Cowboys.
He gave us a legitimate superstar.
Kelly's going to throw. Here's Haley. Hit him and picked off in the air for a touchdown.
He
of legitimized really our entire team.
This is a great effort by Charles Haley.
Here's a guy who was a part of 5 world champions.
He was a critical part of those San Francisco championship teams. And when he came to Dallas, he was the difference maker.
Does Haley get the regard he deserves? Certainly not. He's got the jewelry, though.
Running back is one of the NFL's marquee positions. So what could make a running back underrated?
You know what? That's an interesting question.
One variable is constant.
Definitely small market. You know, people aren't going to know a lot about you.
Perennial 1,000-yard rusher Fred Taylor received relatively little national acclaim.
Fred, playing in Jacksonville, nobody even knows where Jacksonville is. I live there. I don't know where it is.
Despite big numbers, Kansas City's Priest Holmes only achieved fantasy football celebrity.
Kansas City doesn't matter. At the end of the day, nobody cares about Kansas City.
But he couldn't get a knee up on our next guy.
The number 2 most underrated player of all time, Roger Craig.
Number 2.
People never talk about Roger Craig. I'm shocked that you brought Roger Craig up to me today.
Why is he underrated? I don't know. That's a good question.
I think the reason he's underrated is because he doesn't have the huge volume of numbers.
Craig, first down, first through 30. Big chase.
He's, in a lot of ways, the overlooked 49er player from that era.
In 1985, our number 2 most underrated player achieved an NFL first with 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving in the same season. Yet in 13 years of eligibility, Craig has only been a Hall of Fame finalist once.
Lobs it to Craig, touchdown 49ers.
He was a blueprint of how a running back can do it in that West Coast offense.
Marshall Faulk followed the Roger Craig template.
He falls in that category of guys that can do so many things so well that you don't remember them for one particular thing.
The 49ers were considered a finesse team. Joe Montana's beautiful passes and Jerry Rice's balletic catches, and you know, nobody who tried to tackle Roger Craig thought the 49ers were a finesse team. They thought, oh my Lord, his knees are up at his shoulders and he's accelerating.
He was busting people. He knocked a couple people down, knocked a couple of his own players out of the way.
Roger Craig was about knees.
Pistoning legs.
High knees, churning, pounding, kicking guys in the chin.
A discouraging run for the defense by Roger Craig.
I just want to make sure that you guys run the footage of his touchdown run in 1988.
Breaks loose and runs loose. He gets here to the 30, to the 25. He's down to the 20. Breaks loose again.
He was like a car that had no brakes.
What a bonanza. Spectacular run by Roger Craig.
Roger Craig was a winner. I mean, 11 years in the league, 11 playoff appearances. Is that a coincidence? I think not.
He was a part of 3 Super Bowl champions, so he's getting his yards in meaningful games.
Caught there by Craig for a touchdown. And Craig goes in for the score.
I know no other running back had more Super Bowl rings.
Hand off to Craig. Sweeps touchdown 49ers.
Here it is, baby. Next year, 3-peat.
So, why isn't Roger Craig first on our list?
1990, the fumble.
Behind the line of scrimmage, and the Giants have the ball. Lawrence Taylor out of the pack with the ball.
God, it hurts. It hurts to say it. Try not to say that out loud too often, but if not for that, there's another Super Bowl, and I think he would already be in the Hall of Fame.
That team was loaded. They didn't win all those Super Bowls because they weren't.
Why don't I make it 3 times?
There were other guys who were more underrated than he was. You talk about a John Taylor, and that guy was a phenomenal player.
And because they won multiple championships, he's probably higher on the list than he should be.
Roger Craig was the engine that made it all stir. He did everything.
Go, baby, keep the pressure on.
Roger Craig could do it all. High knees, and he won championships.
I think he's got to be number 1.
And now, the number 1 most underrated player of all time, Bart Starr.
Number 1.
Bart Starr? I walked down the street today coming here and I heard Bart Starr's name 7 times.
Bart Starr, underrated. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was an MVP of the Super Bowl. He's done the coin flip in the Super Bowl. What do you mean underrated?
It's hard to argue that Bart Starr is underrated when he's in the Hall of Fame. And in fact, I think there are some people who will tell you just the opposite, that he is overrated and doesn't even belong in the Hall of Fame.
I don't know what he means by that.
I don't know who I'd put ahead of him. If I were playing tomorrow, I'd want him there.
Kramer should have hit you. You should allow whoever put Bart Starr number 1 should be able to go into a dark room with Jerry Kramer. Jerry Kramer beat him up.
Let's just go over his resume.
I'm Bart Starr. I was a 17th round draft choice of the Green Bay Packers.
That's 10 rounds more than even exists right now. So first of all, that's pretty underrated.
Here it is Starr who deserves more credit, I guess, than I can give him up here.
He also has the Ice Bowl sneak. He also has 2 Super Bowl championships. And he has a 15-3 touchdown to interception ratio in the postseason.
Starr looks, has time, goes in the end zone, great pitch.
Now, just look at those numbers in a decade where they didn't throw the football a lot and on a team that definitely didn't want to throw the football. And there's your case for Bart Starr number 1.
Thank you very much.
Bart Starr was a great, great player, but people will say to you, well, look what all Bart Starr had to work with.
His issue, if you're looking at why he might be underrated, he's surrounded by a litany of Hall of Famers.
We had Horning and Taylor, and we had a great offensive line and a great defense, and we're a pretty well-rounded club.
All right. We make them all right.
I don't think Bart Starr gets enough credit for his accomplishments in the game. He didn't throw the ball all over the field.
A quick pass as Starr hit him perfectly.
He played within the Lombardi system.
What we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here and try to run this play in the alley.
Here's what I want you to do as a quarterback. Get the job done.
Yes, sir.
You're not defensively, they don't seem to be coming off the ball. Maybe 53 and 52, see?
Yes, sir.
And with Lombardi hovering over the franchise, sometimes you have to remember that Bart Starr actually quarterbacked the Green Bay Packers, and it wasn't Vince taking the snaps.
As if Vince Lombardi's shadow wasn't big enough, our number 1 most underrated player had his best days while another football king was being crowned.
He went head-to-head with Unitas all through the 60s. This is a fact. When the Pro Bowl team was picked, the coach picked the starter. Well, the 2 quarterbacks were Starr and Unitas. Lombardi was the head coach who picked Unitas to start the game.
When it comes to Bart Starr, you have to think like a movie Twilight fan. There's Team Bart and there's Team Johnny.
What the hell's going on out here?
If you're on Team Johnny, you're likely to underrate Bart Starr, and if you're on Team Bart, you're likely to overrate them. I think it's all a matter of who's doing the rating in that case.
Though more popular quarterbacks have come and gone, it's Starr's unmatched success in the postseason that earns him our top spot.
Do you know what his record was in playoff games? 9-1. He lost his first one and never lost after that.
Everybody wants to think about the Super Bowls. It was more than just the Super Bowls.
Here as he throws, has the ball, and it's McGee, touchdown.
He won 3 other championships along the way. So he's got 5 championship rings, and that's more than Terry Bradshaw. That's more than Joe Montana. And you put that in perspective, and here's a guy that was completing nearly 60% of his passes during his career. Bart Starr definitely is the most underrated player in the history of the National Football League.
You know, it's become almost trendy to say Bart Starr is underrated. Oh, he was a game manager. Nobody appreciates what Bart Starr did.
Nobody recognizes how important he was.
Bart Starr, 17th round pick.
He was drafted in the 17th round.
I don't think he was underrated. I think he's rated about where he should be.
Jeez, you cut everything off.
It's weird to think that a great quarterback who won championships in Titletown could be underrated, but yeah, maybe he is.
This may be the end of our list, but we can always count on our experts to tell us which overlooked players we overlooked.
Boy, you could probably
say anybody not named Tom Brady.
You know who the most underrated player is? It's not on this list. Tom Brady.
I'd have to put Tebow as the most underrated player.
That's a miserable description of him, that he's underrated. I hate the people that came up with that list. I hope they all get like ringworm.